So, good morning, students, and we are here today to discuss Act 1, Scene 1 of The Merchant of Venice. Now, before we begin with Act 1, Scene 1, let me tell you that this is one of the most famous plays written by William Shakespeare, and this play is based on a true story which dates back to almost 1,000 years from now. The play was, of course, not written so long ago. William Shakespeare had taken the idea for the story from the real life event, and then he had written this play almost 400 years ago. So we have to deal with the contemporary society of William Shakespeare, how England used to be in those times, and in what way people interacted with each other, and in what way they followed certain norms and customs, their cultural traits. There are many beliefs which people had in those times, and those beliefs can also be found in this play many a times. So this play is based on the story of a merchant whose name is Antonio, and he has no family of his own, but his best friend Bassanio is very close to him. And Antonio is a rich merchant. He is the owner of a number of cargo ships, or as it is mentioned, argosies. Now these argosies or cargo ships of Antonio, they went to different ports of the world from Venice carrying goods, and in this way Antonio was involved in a kind of export and import business, and he was a very rich man. Now what we find in the opening scene, that is Act 1, Scene 1 of the play, is that Antonio is apparently sad. He is not talking much, and his two friends Salarino and Salanio are trying to cheer him up. They are trying to find a reason behind Antonio's sadness, and even though Antonio initially does not accept the fact that he is upset or he is sad, eventually with the logic, with the the arguments given by these two friends of Antonio, he accepts the fact that yes, he is a bit tensed for some unknown reason. Now we are going to see what happens in the opening scene of this play. And remember, the opening scene of The Merchant of Venice works like an introduction to the play. It gives us a synopsis of what is likely to happen. It gives us a hint or an idea about what is likely to happen later in the play. So the main plot of the play is Antonio, his ships, his best friend Bassanio, and Bassanio needs some money because he is in love with a girl called Portia who lives in Belmont, and he wants to go there and he wants to marry her, and for that he needs a lot of money which he wants to borrow from Antonio. And Antonio says that since he does not have ready cash with him, I mean such a big amount which Bassanio probably needs, that is an amount of 3,000 ducats. 3,000 ducats. Ducats was the currency unit of Venice in those times. So he says that Bassanio should borrow it from some moneylender, and Antonio says that he is going to stand as guarantor for the borrowing. And Bassanio accordingly decides to borrow the money from Jewish moneylender Shylock. Now Shylock was hated by Antonio, like all other Jews. There was always, you can say, a difference between the Jews and the Christians, and Shylock belonged to that category where Antonio simply hated him. But because right now Bassanio needs money, Antonio agrees to stand as guarantor, and so they borrow the money from Shylock. So ultimately, it is this Shylock who gets Antonio into trouble. Now, how that happens comes only later in the play, but as of now, this is the opening scene where we find three characters in a street in Venice, where Antonio is feeling sad for some unknown reason, according to him, and his two friends, Salanio and Salarino, are trying to cheer him up. So, in this scene, Antonio says that his sadness makes him depressed and dull. He further says that he is yet to learn, that is yet to understand about the origin and nature of his sadness. He says that he is not very sure about how he got this sadness into him, how it originated, what is the reason, exact reason behind his sadness. And Salarino tells Antonio that he is sad because his mind is preoccupied with his ships filled with cargo which are out at the sea and have gone to different countries, different ports of the world. And Salarino compares Antonio's ships sailing on the waves with the great lords and wealthy citizens who look down on lesser men as they walk along the street. He says that compared to the smaller ships, Antonio's ships move swiftly on the sea with their canvas sails and look like grand spectacles or pageants of the sea. So here we see a comparison being made by Salarino that Antonio's ships are just like rich, wealthy, aristocratic gentlemen or citizens of Venice who are rich, elite class people. As they walk down the street, they look down upon the ordinary people who are also in the street. The same way, when Antonio's ships, they move along the ocean, there are other smaller ships and boats alongside, and they pass by these ships and boats with an elegance, with a grandeur, with a style, with a greatness, with an importance, air of importance, just like those elite class gentlemen do. So the smaller boats and ships are comparable to ordinary people, and the huge cargo ships of Antonio are comparable to elite class gentlemen. They are like the pageants of the sea. Pageants, just like when you bring out a procession, or as you have seen on Republic Day in Rajpath, you see different states and different organizations, they bring out their tableaus. Now these tableaus are pageants. These are road shows where there is a display of something important concerning the state or concerning the organization. So the same way, these large cargo ships of Antonio are majestic, big, large. They are just like, as if they are participating in some kind of pageant or show. And as they pass by, the lesser boats and ships, they bob up and down as if bowing again and again, as if trying to show respect or reverence to them. The simple reason behind this is because the waves or the ripples that are created by the movement of these large ships, the displacement of water that takes place, hits the smaller ships and boats alongside, and they go up and down. So this up and down motion of these boats and ships are compared to the bowing ordinary citizens when they see elite class gentlemen or nobles or lords passing by. So this is the comparison used here.